All right, we're getting close to the end, only 2 more chapters. Chapter 56, 155 years. Back at the highway, the old lady and her brother were waiting in the van. The silver ring was back on her left hand, and her right hand wore a stone glove that held the rock feather. When I asked about the rock birds, she pointed at the ground and said, "Back where they belong." The old man offered us all a ride home, and how we all fit in the back of that van I can't say. The answer to that goes beyond geometry. There was even room for Stump to lie down on the floor so that he wouldn't have to scare people in passing cars. Duckwad could have joined him. There was room, but he said he'd had enough sunlight for that year and crossed the highway to wade into the river without even waving goodbye. The river took him back without a ripple of complaint, which goes to show just how big a river is. 2 kids hopped off in Big Rock, and the rest of us hung on till Blue Wing, where the old man had to pull over every few blocks to drop someone off, 'cause he had to drop all those kids off. Excited shouts of "I'm home!" filled the air behind us. A handful of kids couldn't find their families. Too much time had gone by, and their parents had moved away or passed on. We delivered them to Sheriff Tommy Pope, who told them not to worry. The sheriff's department kept missing persons file on every one of them, and the files listed where their families had moved or the location of their nearest relative. By the time we got to Duke's house, the whole town was abuzz. We trooped through the open back door, the old lady leading the way with the stone feather. She had Grandpa B back to breathing in a jiffy. Tipping his hat to us, he stretched and said he'd never felt more rested. Aunt Phyllis and Uncle Norm took the news about Duke way better than I expected. They didn't even mind that he couldn't be bothered to come and say goodbye. They actually looked kind of relieved. I guess Duke was that bad of a little boy, huh? Jim Dandy claimed that he'd always known there was something familiar about Duke. All 3 crickets called out, "No, there wasn't." Jim Dandy was not being honest again. Biz took off in a lather the instant he heard of Duckwad's return, crying out, "He's got a head start in finding our fathers!" Stump and Jim Dandy streaked after him, though Stump did pause long enough at the back door to say thanks. Such thoughtfulness is rare, and I knew I was going to miss him. The deputy and Dr. E.O. Moneybaker followed the trolls in hot pursuit, but losing sight of them before they even cleared the backyard fence. Men of science and the law just didn't have eyes for anything rivery. Whether women of science and law had any sharper vision, I can't say, but I can testify that despite failing eyesight, Grandpa B saw Biz, Jim Dandy, and Stump escape just fine, even cheered them on. Dr. Moneybaker stormed back to the house and phoned One Shot, ordering up a fresh batch of photographs. One Shot's answer made the doctor gripe. "I knew that." Old Duff couldn't stop wagging his tail. The sparrow perched atop Uncle Norm's head lit out of the back door as fast as his wings could carry him. The old lady and her brother cleared out pretty quick, too, claiming they were needed elsewhere. But before they drove off, the lady placed her hands on my shoulders for one last peek into my eyes. When I checked out her eyes, all I saw was the river, peaceful and lovely as a daydream. "Crickets?" I asked, wondering what she was seeing. A mysterious smile had curled the corners of her mouth, among other things, and patting my cheek she was gone before I could quiz her further. Then Grandpa was pulling me home by the arm. When we got back to my house, Mom and Dad pretty near hugged us to pieces before grounding me forever. Even my sisters seemed glad to see me. Mom had been making them feed flies to 3 down in the basement. When I asked if they had heard anything from Lottie, they rolled their eyes and reminded me that turtles couldn't talk. Nobody knew what to make of Uncle Floyd. He kept gawking at everything and bumping into what he wasn't gawking at, and with a goofy grin he asked what year it was. According to Grandpa, Uncle Floyd had been gone 155 years, though he barely looked a day older than 16. We dressed him up in some of Dad's clothes and set up a cot for him in the basement. When Grandpa lobbied for Uncle Floyd to bunk at his house, Mom exercised veto power, saying that if he was ever going to adjust, he needed to be around people his own age. "We have to set up a house in the cemetery for that," Grandpa said. "You know what I mean," Mom answered firmly. He looked the same age as Fran and Lily. How are you going to pass him off? Grandpa asked, hanging tough. We'll say he's a cousin visiting from Kalamazoo, Mom said, chock full of surprising answers. So we had a new member of our family, one who kept us on our toes. He couldn't quit trying to talk to people on TV, or jumping up every time the phone rang, leaning out a window whenever a jet rumbled overhead. There were some pluses, though. For one thing, my sister spent so much time being embarrassed about having a new man around the house that they couldn't be bothered with worrying about me and 3. Chapter 57. The Missing Fathers. All in all, I was pretty well satisfied with events. Maybe that explains what I did several nights later when I heard a screech, screech, screech at my bedroom window. Checking, I found Stump clinging to the capitol tree, looking terrified of heights. I laughed to see him, then sobered when I noticed Biz and Jim Dandy standing below. Duckwad, nowhere in sight. Remember, Duckwad is Duke. We have a favor to ask, Stump said, sheepish about it. How big? Not so. We just need you to look inside a cabin for us. Shouldn't be too dangerous. What's in the cabin? I said. Maybe our fathers? All of them? Could be. You know what it's like trying to figure out what the cricket is saying. Not hard, not hard, not hard, the crickets sang on their shoulders. I crawled out the window before talking woke someone who might remind me that I was grounded forever. I didn't even ask why they couldn't look in the cabins themselves. That question got answered about 2 hours later when we reached the dugout canoes on a sandbar far above Big Rock. There was the cabin, but between it and us was a ripple in the river that the trolls didn't want any part of. I wasn't too thrilled with it myself. Midnight had come and gone by then, and a quarter moon gave off enough light to make the ripple wink at us. It wasn't the kind of wink that left anyone feeling comfortable. What's that ripple? I asked. It's nothing to worry about, Jim Dandy promised, silky as ever. The blue-winged spell stops here, Stump whispered at my side. We daren't go beyond it, but it shouldn't be any problem for you. Take this, Biz squeaked, holding out an old flashlight. The flashlight was identical to the old man's flashlight, all the way down to the Dayglow atomic sticker on its end, but I didn't ask where they'd gotten it. Turning on its beam, which was as bright as a car, headlights, I advanced along the shore with 3 trolls in tow. Stopping short of the ripple, I could hear the river rushing over something, but when I shined my light on the water, all I saw was sandy bottom. The line made by the ripple stretched out of sight across the river. At my feet, where the line met the shore, it turned into a mound of sand about the size of what a mole might push up. It cut straight across the island, headed towards the bluffs. 50 yards beyond the ripple sagged a tumble-down log cabin that looked as though it seen 100 floods come and go. Why would your fathers go there? I asked. The 3 river trolls shook their heads in total bewilderment. Emeralds, Reliable St. John answered for them. Diamonds, the cricket sang. Gold doubloons, added Jim Dandy's cricket. All lies, of course, but to find out otherwise, I'd have to hike over there in person. I did feel a tingle as I stepped over the ripple, but other than that, I could have been stepping over a sidewalk crack. The river and valley and sky on the other side looked exactly the same as did the trolls standing behind me. Jogging, I soon reached the cabin and shined my light through the glassless side window. Inside was nothing but one small room with rotted-out floorboards and junk deposited by the last flood that passed through. Pop cans, paper plates, plastic spoons. There was no sign of missing troll fathers or anything that might have lured them. Turning around, I was about to call out there was nothing there when I saw it. A hole was opening at the base of the huge old cottonwood tree, 20 steps behind Stump, Biz, and Jim Dandy. A rock troll was tumbling out of the hole. He held a pitchfork. He wore a bib. He looked as though Bodacious Deepthink might be his cute little sister. I didn't need to shout, "Look out!" The only thing quiet about the rock troll's humongous was his manners. "Pudding!" he slobbered. "Pudding!" "We're not sorry! We're not sorry!" slobbered the lucky cave crickets. Uh-oh, did they trick 'em? Backed up against the ripple, Stump, Biz, and Jim Dandy had nowhere to go but the river. They might have made it too, except that Jim Dandy fainted, for real this time, and Biz thought he was stoned again. Something told me they weren't the first river trolls to freeze up on the exact same spot. It appears the cricket's lies had led us to a trap. True blue to the end, Stump struggled to drag his friends into the river, but there wasn't time. The rock troll was closing fast. With a whoop I came running. That slowed the rock troll for maybe a split second. To laugh. I was about to hurl the flashlight at him. Before I let it go, the light beam raked across his face, blinding him. Raising a hand to shield his eyes, he tripped. "Get down!" I yelled. Stump shoved Biz on top of Jim Dandy, then dove to sand himself. The rock troll sailed over them, shooting past the ripple. The blood-curdling scream he let out that instant made my ears flap. "Cold!" As he tumbled and twisted on the far side of the ripple, his feet splashed into the river. A block of ice instantly formed around them. His wails and writhing went on until he burst into a crackling flame, which according to the old lady was the only way he could keep warm. As he lifted off the ground, his flames grew brighter. In less than a minute he was blinding as a shooting star. Then he began to shriek until no time at all. He was as small as a shooting star, pointing skyward as he zoomed out of sight. "That or pudding," Biz squeaked, breaking out of our trance. "Hey," Jim Dandy said, coming to life. "That means we did it. We found him." And they danced and sang, and I joined in too. We didn't sound any better than the last time, but at least we weren't at it long. When we started line dancing down the beach, we tripped over the same thing that had sent the rock troll sprawling. We ended up in a giggly pile on the sand, several feet shy of the ripple. At the center of the pile was a large box turtle who had parked right in everyone's way. It was my friend Lottie, come to say hello. The end.